Three, we're on. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Benicia Unified School Board Governing Board meeting for September 3rd, 2020. In compliance with Executive Order N29-20 and N35-20 issued by Governor Newsom on March 12th and 21st, 2020, respectively, this meeting is live streamed and recorded on the Benicia YouTube channel. There are links for parents to have an opportunity to submit comments. You may also at this time still submit a comment for our public hearing, which will occur in a little while. At this point, our first order of business is to report out. We had a student discipline matter that we met with in closed session, and I would like to call for a recommendation, for a motion, please, from Mrs. Ada. Are you getting ready?
I guess I can. I make but I need the number. I make a motion that we accept, regarding case 18-006, we accept this person coming back to school with stipulations as we talked about.
Okay, I have a second.
I second. I'll second that.
This is a roll call vote. So, Mrs. Martinez?
President Fraction?
Yes.
Trustee Hogan?
Yes.
Trustee Seda?
Yep.
Trustee Fox?
There.
And
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, at this point, again, I'm just going to remind everybody that comments for public hearing will be accepted between, well, it looks like the window is closing now for public hearing comments. So, and if you did, please make sure you mark them public hearing on those comments. So at this time, I'd like to invite everybody to please stand and join me in the pledge. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag for the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as has shown.
I'll second.
Do I have a second? Mr. Maselli, second.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're going to move on to reports. Dr. Young.
Very good. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everybody. Just a quick update from me. So as we all know, this is week 3 of virtual learning. And I think that when we listen to the system and we work with everybody closely, we're continuing to make steady progress. And, we recognize this is not easy. This is, it's challenging for folks. It's challenging in people's homes and for kids and staff. So we're sensitive to that, adjusting, trying to be as flexible as possible. And we keep talking about, too, in week 3 that, still working towards getting into a rhythm with the whole thing, a rhythm and a routine. And it takes a while to do that. There's still pieces of this that are getting clear for us because we had the guidance into that legislation, SB 98. We have all the language around it, but we're getting, more clarity in the application of the attendance piece. And then there's an engagement documentation. So we're working our way through, myriad parts of our virtual learning model. But I want to congratulate all the staff, teachers and everybody supporting this effort, and certainly parents and certainly our kids. These are very unique and different times. And I know we keep telling ourselves, let's be patient, let's be flexible with one another. I know we all want to be back at school, and hopefully at some point we'll be in that setting. But for now, it's virtual learning, and we're trying our best to do the very best we can with it. I think you all are aware and watched the news, and that the governor's team put together a new system of measuring, where counties are. It's a 4-tiered system. I think it's purple, red, and get the next 2 colors. But Solano County is in that purple tier, where that still says at the top, still widely spread. So, obviously we're being, very, very cautious and judicious with all of our interactions with one another now and as we move forward. And we continue to work very closely with both of our unions. Any implementation of any model that's different than the virtual learning. We talked about a hybrid model in the past, and that was presented to the board. That would necessitate those good working relationships we have with the union. We have to work very closely with them and put those MOUs together, just like we did in the spring when we went to virtual learning then, and then we did during the summer. So more to come. We're monitoring the data closely, working with the county health department, working with the Solano County superintendent and our other superintendent colleagues in Solano County. So that's where we are right now. And again, we appreciate everybody's patience and flexibility in taking care of the kids and really taking care of one another in this unique and challenging time. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Young. So
Welcome.
do any of the board members have a report they'd like to make or information to share? Mrs. Zeta?
Yes, Dr. Young and I attended a Zoom meeting for the Benicia Education Foundation, and I'm just happy to report that even though things are so different this year, they are still trying to find ways to raise money and looking towards the future. We don't know what that future is going to bring, so things are kind of put on hold, but I just want to thank them for the efforts that they're making to try to help us in many areas that we need funding. I also wanted to say to the teachers out there that are watching, I know this is a different year. Usually I'd be coming to schools and I would be stepping in on classrooms and just visiting, and I feel that, we don't want to not be there. We want to be there. And I'm just going to say for myself that if any of you want me to come visit a Zoom class of yours, please let me know. Send me a link. Let me know when you would like me in, and I would definitely participate and be there for you. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thanks.
Thank you for saying that.
Ms. Zeta, I know I'm a little out of my time there, Madam President, but
I'm watching.
When you thank people, you invariably leave somebody out. But I also wanted to make sure I'm thanking all the union groups, all employees in the district. Just thinking about food services, they've been doing this since March, and in our child care group, and just everybody in our really special little school districts. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. They're all doing a great job.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share?
I attended the public officials meeting on the COVID update and shared that with my colleagues, and just to share with the group that Solano County continues to do better. We are still in the purple level. Our peak county cases was July 15th. And Diane, I need you to mute.
Oh, sorry.
So in July 15th was the peak number of cases for our county, where we are averaging about 100 cases a day being reported. Now we're at about 40 cases a day. So we're doing a lot better. Our data's a couple weeks old, but the trend is definitely going in that direction. But we do need to still get better than 40 cases a day so that we can change tiers and be able to move forward. And so that was the big point of today's meeting, was that things are getting better, but we need to still keep working at it. And so thank everybody who's wearing their masks and doing their social distancing and washing your hands, and keep on it, folks. We're doing it one step at a time. Thank you.
Great public service announcement. Okay, well, I also attended that. There you go. I also attended that phone call. So Dr. Hogan, you did a great job of sharing it out. So thank you very much. Also, I attended the curriculum Zoom meeting again, which Dr. Beatson and Mrs. Rice will be sharing out. So I'm going to keep you in suspense until they get to share their report. But it's pretty exciting, the amount of work they've gotten done in this amount of time. Everybody is working extremely hard. The other thing that I did too is I was asked to make an announcement and just remind everybody that the window for the census closed September 30th. So if you have not completed your census form, please get it done. This feels like a public service meeting at this point. And then also that I was able to listen in on the first Benicia Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum the other night for Benicia. It's the first time they did one. I think they did a relatively good job considering it was the first time, and it was really kind of exciting to hear all the people talk about themselves and the positions and what they want for Benicia at the same time in one place. So it was, I thought it was really informative. So thank you for that as well. In our little town, it's always really helpful. So that about wraps up reports. I believe. Did I miss anybody? Okay, we are all good. And then I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is comments. Members of the public may submit comments on items on the agenda and any item within the jurisdiction of the school district in the following manner. They may use the Google form that is on the online. It's open to the public from 6 to 7. At this time, there were no speakers that submitted any comments for us tonight. So I'm going to move on with the agenda. Number 10 is the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be approved by the board in one motion. There'll be no discussion on these items unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items to be pulled and discussed. I would like to, we have a resolution also on our consent item, so that needs to be pulled and we need to do a roll call vote on that. So how about if we do the resolution first?
You want to ask for a motion?
Yes, can I get a motion for resolution, which is 10.3, please? We will need to do a roll call.
I move that we consider resolution 10.3 and do a roll call vote.
Okay, can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Helgreen. Okay, roll call, please, Mrs. Martinez.
She's on mute.
Mrs. Martinez, you're on mute.
Hold on, let's get to the resolution.
Just lost my screen.
Okay, President,
Yes.
Trustee,
Yes.
yes. Trustee Maselli?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Now can I have a motion, please, to approve, a motion to approve the consent calendar as it is presented tonight?
I move that we approve the consent calendar as listed.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Dr. Moss? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent calendar is passed. I'll move to item number 11, which is the discussion item, and it is the Measure S Quality Bond Update. Mr. Rahal, you want to tee that up?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Tonight we have our Director of Bond Projects, Miss Roxanne Egan, who will let you know we just had our quarterly Bond Oversight Committee meeting, and she has some updates to present for you tonight. Ms. Egan?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Tim. So I just did a screen share. Can everybody see that? Great. I thought I would just start with giving you an overview of information I was going to share with you. And a lot of it is stuff that was updated with the Oversight Committee meeting, but then some of it is just other bond project stuff in addition to the Oversight Committee meeting that I haven't talked to for a while, so we thought we'd give you some updates.
Ms. Egan, this is Charles. I was wondering, is her sound a little staticky?
Is it? Okay, let's see.
Dr. Moss is saying she's very muffled.
Is that better if I just do it without headphones? Can you hear me? Okay, so let me turn the volume up so I can make sure if I can hear you as well. Sorry.
No, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. You're a little quiet to me, just so you know. So if I don't respond right away, just talk louder, please. So in overviewing the projects, I thought, first of all, I would give you a brief introduction and an update on the information that we had and share with the Oversight Committee meeting. And then after that, just give you some some of the information on Mary Farmer Elementary School modernization, and then just a brief little graphic of the high school marquee that we've been working on. So we met with the Oversight Committee meeting on August 25th, and it was well attended, which we've got a great committee, and we were really grateful for them. It was our first Zoom Oversight Committee meeting, so that was a little, you never know what's going to happen, but it went well, and everybody was right up to speed, so that was good. You guys have all the details in your packet, but instead of going through all of them, if you have any questions, I'm happy to ask them, but I was just going to kind of hit some highlights. We reviewed bond projects and expenditures, and everything was approved by the Oversight Committee meeting. The recently completed projects that were highlighted were Joe Henderson and Matthew Turner Elementary School fire alarms, so that was good. And then the middle school modernization phase 1 in the completed projects list. Yay! And then a second kind of category of projects was projects in construction, which currently is the Liberty High School and DO fire alarm project. And just a small note there, we have, just last week, we received word that we were awarded. We had applied but hadn't received official confirmation yet, but we were awarded $173,000 of matching monies for Prop 51. So super excited about that. And that will just help our project and bond money be able to go farther. We have under contract work to replace the Liberty High School windows, which are kind of a safety issue and in need of replacement. So that's exciting. Hoping to get that done before we return from virtual learning. And then in planning, we have the modernization for Mary Farmer and the middle school seismic upgrades. Those are at DSA. We're hoping to have approval through DSA by the end of the year. And then we'll look into bidding that next year and set construction timelines. And then the last thing in planning that we have going on is the high school marquee. Just a note in reference to the Oversight Committee meeting is that Scott Burford has been our chair, the committee chair for the last 3 years. And this was his last meeting because he's actually been on the Oversight Committee meeting since 2014. He was one of the first people at the time that the bond was passed. And he's just been a great champion and really good support. So we're sad that he's termed out and won't be on the board or the committee any longer. And so we'll be, when we return to you next time, we'll be bringing new candidates for your consideration. The next Oversight Committee date is October 27th at 9 o'clock via Zoom. I'm going to make this larger. So now I was going to move into some updates on Mary Farmer for their modernization. And this is, we had a meeting in early this year and met with the staff. They developed a committee that we brought the architect and shared out ideas that had been developed from input. It's very schematic, but wanting to get the teachers' use and input. And so this is the agenda. I've tweaked it just in a few places with updates, but just because time has passed and I didn't want to represent something that has morphed since then, but generally it's the same thing that was shared with them. So overall, the approach on Mary Farmer is that we're going to master plan the entire site so that any improvements that we do will fit within the bigger picture for what needs to be done. We have a present approved budget for their work at $8.3 million. We know that the construction project for the entire site will cost more than 8.3 million, probably another 50% more. But we want to plan everything so that the things that we do fit within a grand scheme. There may be opportunities for additional budget allocation with forthcoming Prop 51 monies. And of course, all of those grants have been submitted, and we should know definitively in 2022 that we should start seeing some checks coming in. And then when that happens, we'll return and the board and everybody can have input on whether or not, where that money gets allocated, what the priorities within the district are. So the guiding parameters at Mary Farmer in the design were set at critical portable classroom replacement, site and existing building modernization, safety and roads, and site identity. And then at the meeting, we had the architect walk through the pages. And I didn't have him join us tonight, but we will definitely bring him to future meetings and let him share out as the design continues to develop. And I'm sure he'll be excited to, we want to give them credit for all their work that they're doing and also give the board an opportunity to meet them and have input. Next steps that we talked about were meeting with the city and Safe Routes to the Schools to discuss the Drillette Drive new usage. Because I'm going to flip down to the schematic design and you'll see the proposal, but it's doing one-way drive-through from Military West up through the school and then exiting onto Drillette during peak hours. On off drop-off and pickup times, then it wouldn't be like that. And then next steps, continued development of the schematic plans, and then updates to the site. We definitely need to keep having meetings. Timelines that we shared were 2020 HVAC and roofing repair. So there was a project back in 2015 that replaced on the main building that we're not going to be, the overall goal is to make improvements across the whole campus. But we know the portables need replaced, but the main building is just going to, get some upgrades. But with that, in 2015, the roofing on all of the main building was replaced with the exception of one area where they have, it's above the library and it's a lower roof level and they have a lot of HVAC on that area. So it's really complicated and you have to do the HVAC and roofing all together. So we are in planning. They're working on construction documents and we've had a lot of information with the architect and the mechanical engineer on working with that. Other things, 2020 to 2021, master planning and design development for the phase 1, because similar to the middle school, this is definitely going to have to be broken out in phases. And once we kind of agree on here's our master plan and everybody has blessed it, then we'll work to prioritize the phases and how that all comes together. Looking in 2021 for DSA submittal and approval and then bidding it. Once we get through that, then we can set these construction dates and start sharing those out. We did some brainstorming to try to think of in the interim, because it's a long process. When there's a lot of work like this, you want to do the planning do good planning up front. And so we try to do some brainstorming on what are some pieces that we could show some improvements so the site doesn't say it's going to be so long. We know that they need improvements and just wanted to try to find some areas that we could do sooner than later while the big picture is still in planning. So one possibility, and we talked about that we won't be able to get to all of these, but maybe just one or two. But one possibility would be some work at the entry at Military West for site identity and helping to give that as a presence and a space. The office reconfiguration for entry and safety renovations, landscaping around the front, one-way traffic modifications, and possibly improvements within the main building. So it could be some surface upgrades or the great room / dance hall. There was talk about how could we reimagine that space and make it be all that it can be. It was a good meeting that we had with the site users and there was a lot of input. There's still processing to be done and we'll go back with updates with more of their information integrated in the comments and suggestions. These are some graphics from SVA, the architects, and just kind of showing some of the concepts and the things to give us a visual for what they're talking about. So site identity here, lack of site and entry identity. So this is at the main building, but also definitely talked about at military, the drop-off zone in the mornings for schools, some classroom administration updates, the Great Hall, which is underutilized, and we feel like it could be reimagined for a better space. And then, of course, the portable class replacement, which is definitely a need. Their next page here, it outlines the existing site. So this highlights, some of it's just identifying existing uses and spaces, and other is identifying areas that need to be addressed. So over here we have the entry area where we want to give more of a sense of space and identity off of Military. As we drive up through here, there were some congestion and need for better flow overall. This is showing their existing garden space and playground, identifying the shared field with the high school. These relocatables don't have any restrooms and feel isolated, and then drop-off issues. So there's a little summary on the bottom there for the site plan and the spaces. This is the, again, very schematic, and this will continue to morph, but just wanting to share out some of the ideas that were initially discussed. So we're showing some type of an entry element to help give identity as we come off of West Military. And then this here is a reconfigured parking space that had this circle turnaround, and they end up with a better drop-off zone, looking for a one-way drive-through and exiting out Drolette during school drop-off and pickup time, adding some landscaping improvements. So a new wing of portables. This purple is, it's and versus blue, they're both new, but they're identifying different stages of construction. And then moving the kindergarten and preschool up to the front of the school. They did an initial try on assigning clusters of classrooms, and there's still much discussion, and that will continue to morph. So this was the first pass, and the site users gave some discussion, and it's going to keep, it's not there yet, but it's going to keep getting there. But so that's kind of overall what we're looking at. And then there's the summaries for the additions. This next page just shows some, it's not necessarily this is the elements and the design that we're going to have. It's just saying, here's some inspirations and some great ideas that may inspire and, you know, what could be. And so the great room, we obviously don't have a vaulted ceiling that's as huge as this, but it just an idea that it could really be a nice breakout space. This example is a little higher, older age group, but there's a lot that could be incorporated and picked up for inspiration. Furniture, outdoor shade area in along the right, what right now is their blacktop, so that they could have an outdoor eating space and stuff like that. Again, these are not necessarily the graphic of what the outside of the building could be, but just wanting to express the need for modernization and also for how you can tie elements in across the building so that it reads as one campus. This next page shows just some beginning ideas, talking about upgraded surfaces inside the classrooms. Oops. This is the end really of the presentation and the stuff that we had on Mary Farmer. I'm gonna go ahead and flip to the next graphic just to kind of share with you guys everything, and then I'm happy to take any questions or go backwards for any discussion that you'd like. So this last slide, we're flashing forward to the high school, a much smaller project, but this is their marquee stopped working completely. And so they have a lot of need to be able to, you know, relate to the community events and what's happening. So this down here is plan view. It's the same corner as the existing marquee is on, but we're looking at angling it. We're going to do a mock-up too before we actually place the final marquee, just a, you know, wood post and plywood, so that you can look at the angle and make sure that we get the best visibility for that corner, because there's a lot of complexities around it. But we also talked about wanting to do almost maybe like a seat wall around here and some plantings, so that you don't just have this marquee, just like how can you meld this and make it fit into your space better and really make the most of it. So that is in the works right now, and I, similar to the other project, want to give kudos to our architect who's been assisting with this. HY is the company that was helping us on this one. So that's the info I've got.
Roxanne, regarding the high school, the marquee, do we know what happened with the other marquee? And is it not able to be fixed?
Yeah, it is dated, and the system that it runs on, it runs all. It's not, short answer is no, they can't. The system on that runs it is so old that the company that built it doesn't exist anymore, and other companies, they're really territorial, and they're like, nope, that's not our product, and we won't touch it. So we've gone through a few gyrations and did a little bit of research, but there's the high school's been kind of limping along with it for quite a while.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And then my second question is, when you looked at the Mary Farmer site, the before and what you're thinking that it could be with the getting rid of the portables and updating. Now, those portables, excuse me, are those portables just obsolete, like they can't be used, or why are we replacing them?
They are, so generally, I'm going to call it shelf life, but the old portables have what they consider to be a livelihood of 40 years, I think, is the outer limits. And we are past that with them. Okay. We could look at doing updates to them, but at some point, you still have a structure that is quite a bit dated. And you spend a lot of money to bring it up, but it's still not just your most, it's not as good as you could be. It's not your best bang for the buck for our age that they've been out there.
And that wing doesn't have any restrooms, which is really bad now because there's no hand washing.
It doesn't look like there's one now either in the new plan.
They don't have it shown right on here, but it was identified, and it will definitely, I guess I need to go back and review that, but I know that we had conversations about it, and I can't remember that if you cover it and attach it, then they have access to the restrooms in the main building, or because they're right across that walkway, or if they're going to actually provide them right inside that. So there's quite a few things on this that are still morphing, but I'm going to make note of that, and it is in our project tracking, and we'll definitely have an answer when we come back on that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, for little children and sanitation, I would definitely want to see them put restrooms in there.
I agree. So Roxanne, also when the initial drawings were we were playing with that school, are those overheads structures that will connect so that when it's raining and the kids are going to the main building for the bathroom or to the library, will there be a covering there for them?
So that is still being discussed. I don't think that it's been finalized yet. The conversation was that it would either be some sort of a covered walkway that may not be fully enclosed building hallway, or else that it could be a fully enclosed attached structure. I think that it could go either way. I kind of tend to lean towards letting it be fully enclosed. I know that there were a lot of things, and even right now it's COVID, but back then it was more like site security. And when we come back, that's going to resurface as a large concern.
Right. I just think that that's going to be important as well for the kids as they're moving back and forth, and for the teachers, because it gets cold and you're wet.
No, thank you. I'll bring that back to them and let everybody know so that we make sure we do it right.
Roxanne, when we talked about moving the kindergarten and everything up front, it brought back the discussion about security and having small children near the road. So I see that there's like a dotted line fence, but we had talked about walling that off, or, making that area secure so that nobody could just walk up to those classrooms like they can now.
That is the intent. It's been, so this is really not the next iteration of drawings, but it's a hybrid. So there's a lot of those things that we discussed are still tracking, but it is definitely the intent that site security, all the way along around this perimeter, that there will be fencing that keeps it separate and walled off. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Roxanne. Anybody else have any other questions for her? Okay, well then I'm going to move on and again say thank you, Roxanne. I'm going to move on to 11.2, which
Thank
is
you.
also Tim Rahill, and it's a discussion of and a report on our enrollment. Tim?
Yes, good evening. I've got an update on our enrollment, our student enrollment in our school district. I'm going to go ahead and share our screen and show you kind of what we had last year and what we were projecting and what we have so far as we opened up school. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully you can see that. We got 3 columns here, and we wanted to show you what we had last year. We take an official count every year in October. It's called the seabeds or the cow pads count, and it's just an official day that throughout the whole state we count our kids. So we'll be doing that on October 7th next month. But we just kind of look at that. We lock that into place. And what you have in this column to the left of the gray bar, it's last year, and up top here, we've got our elementary schools. We just kind of add up all those together, and all of our different grade levels from TK all the way up to 5th grade. We have some students enrolled in our special day classes, and then a couple of them at a non-public school. So just under 2,000 kids in our elementary program, 1,944. So as we look at that, we'll just stay there, I'll say. And then what we were projecting that number to be based on rolling our classes forward, we were projecting that number to be 20 lower. And we planned for that. We adjusted our staffing. And really what happened between our projection and when the kids showed up, these last couple weeks of school, we took the count on August 25th, is we're actually lower than our projection by another 15 kids. So instead of only being down 20, we're actually down 35 students in our elementary schools. So now that brings our enrollment in elementary schools down to 1,909. We'll check in with that, now over the next week or two, just as people are settling in. And you can do your own eyeball comparison between these 2 columns, between, what we were projecting on July 1 and what actually happened when the kids showed up on August, is TK. So basically our TK enrollment is down as it is throughout all of Solano County. We had our monthly meeting with the county office and the other school districts, and I shared that information, and everybody nodded that not only is there in other districts their TK enrollment down, but also their K enrollment. So fortunately for us, we held on to our kindergarten enrollment, but our TK enrollment is not what it has been over the last few years. And we asked our elementary principals what they thought, and their feelings are they think that the parents, the families of those 4-year-olds, those kids that qualify for TK, might just be keeping them home and not enrolling them in a school program, given the challenges some of the challenges that might be associated with that. They don't have any proof of that. They don't have any other information other than just kind of a professional guess as to why that number might be lower. So we still have our 3 TK classes that we've always had. Just the enrollment in those TK classes are a little bit lower than what they usually are. So we'll continue to monitor that. I think we're fortunate that we held on to our kindergarten enrollment, and we'll just kind of move forward from there. Then after we look at our elementary school, we look at our middle school enrollment is here in the center section, kind of sum total in blue. Again, we have our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, a few other programs there. Just last year, we were just over 1,067. Again, our school district, like almost a majority of other school districts in California, we're experiencing what they call declining enrollment. And we just have less students enrolled in our schools coming through our systems. And so just like at the elementary schools, we were projecting a loss of 20 kids. We were projecting a loss of 24 kids at the middle school. This says 612, it should say 68. And what happened is we were pretty close to our projection there. We're just down another 4 students. So we feel pretty good about the actuals coming in pretty close to our projection there. Again, we're going to monitor that and see how that holds up over the next couple of weeks. And then we kind of jump down to the last section here. It is our our high school level from 9th to 12th grade, which includes Benicia High School, Liberty High School, and then our program for community day school. Again, if we look at those 3 programs in total, we were expecting a loss of 50 students there, and that one was a little bit better. We only are down about 42. So overall, if we look at the total down here at the bottom in green, we were projecting a loss of 94. Right now, where we sit, we have a little bit less at 105, and really we can trace that back to the smaller TK population that we have this year. Our official count will happen, as I said, on October 7th this year. We can bring it back to you and let you know how that's holding up. But for the most part, our projected enrollments have come through like we were expecting.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Tim? So Tim, I have a question based on a conversation we had once before. So, and I know you don't report that out on the official enrollment, but our preschool age group, where that 4-year-old could go, has that seen a bump or no?
A very good question. We'll check in with Miss Regis, our preschool director, and check in with her to see how her counts are doing. I know when we restarted those programs, over the summer, following the current guidelines that they were under the current health guidelines, that the program wasn't exactly set up as it was the prior year. But I will definitely check in with her and see what her counts are like.
I would just be curious to see if the fact that they're meeting in person, if that in fact might be influencing some parents with the little ones. So anybody else have any questions for Mr. Rahal? Okay, then thank you very much, Tim. Hopefully next time our numbers are up. Okay, I'm going to go on to number 12, which is our non-consent items. And our first one is going to be by Dr. Gill, and it's a consideration and approval of a variable term waiver. Dr. Gill?
She's on mute.
You're on mute, Mrs. Gill.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share and make this request on behalf of one of our wonderful teachers. Miss Anouk Dorrance is a teacher at Benicia High School. Just to give you a little bit of history, any teachers who have English language learners in their classes must have a CTEL credential to teach the students. Miss Dorrance is in the process of clearing her credential. As part of her clearing the credential, she will also receive her CTEL credential at the end of this school year. But currently she has 1 student. So I am bringing this request to you on her behalf to approve this waiver to be able to teach this year, specifically that student, so that the student can continue to taking the medical CT classes this year, and by the end of the year, she'll have her CTL credential.
Do I have a motion to
I'll ma-
approve the waiver this evening?
I'll make a motion that we approve the variable team waiver request for Anoop Dorrance as written.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the waiver is approved. Thank you, Dr. Gill.
Thank you.
You also have, I believe, item 12.2, which is consideration and approval of a new job description.
Yes, thank you again. So this was brought to us by the Ed Services Department. If Dr. Beatson, feel free to add if I missed something, please. Currently we have a position in the Ed Services Department, which is Coordinator of Education Services. And the request from the Ed Services Department is based on the amount of work and the kind of work that is being done and the need for the students and the curriculum and instruction to support our teachers and support our students is to change the coordinator position into the director position. And the job description is attached with this document as well.
Are there any comments or questions for Dr. Bill? Okay, then do I have a motion to approve the new job description for Director of Educational Services?
I'll make a motion to approve the new job description.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Naselli. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the job description is approved. Thank you, Dr. Gill.
Thank you so much, Governing Board.
At this point, we're going to go to 12.3, and it's actually going to be a public hearing and a discussion on the learning continuity attendance plan. So I need to close our board meeting and open a public hearing on the LCP. Dr. Beatson. You're
muted, Leslie.
Leslie, you're on. There she goes.
All right. Thank you and good evening, everyone. I am here tonight to present as a public hearing the work that we've put in as a district to our learning continuity and attendance plan. So tonight I really want to review with you what the requirements are, how we developed this plan, all the different stakeholder groups that gave us input, and what is in the learning continuity and attendance plan. So this year in Senate Bill 98, it was a requirement for school districts to create this learning continuity and attendance plan, otherwise known as an LCP. It does take the place of the LCAP, the Local Control Accountability Plan, for this school year only. And it really is to provide at a district level how student learning continuity is addressed during COVID crisis. And so it addresses both the options for in-person learning when that is able to happen and what virtual learning will look like. And it also is used as a report to address funding and what kind of funding we're going to be using to support learning during COVID times. So we had many stakeholder group meetings, actually for 34 of them, between meeting with administrators, parent groups, teachers, in a lot of different formats. We did site surveys, we gave surveys to students, and then I'm bringing it to you tonight as a public hearing, and we'll come back in 2 weeks and ask for your approval and adoption of this plan. And then it goes to the county office, and the county does not actually approve this plan, but they do need to have it by our local governing board, and then it needs to be posted on our website within 5 days of approval. So what I'm going to go through first is just some of the feedback that we received from surveys and from parent meetings. And then as we get into the contents of the plan, you hopefully will be able to see, and I'll point out for you where that feedback you can see living inside the plan. And so we gave a survey to staff that really asked about their technology needs, their additional training that they need, and what other support they need to be able to best serve our students. And as you can see by the screen, there is a request for additional training in technology, and then for mindfulness and well-being support for our staff as well as our students. But they've also requested that because everything in their world has changed. From our families, we got over 1,000 responses. And the question was, what types of academic supports would be the most beneficial for your students? And on the left, those are the percentages from a whole list of options for them. Drop-in support at the secondary level ranked the highest, having additional materials, small group support, and perhaps tutoring with community members. So sort of in addition to synchronous learning opportunities. Over on the right side of your screen, those were other things that came up multiple times in the narrative section that we are going to investigate and see which pieces we can actually include in our program this year. So helping figure out ways to have families and kids and staff organize calendars of assignments to make it easier to access, having opportunities for students to stay online to get more independent support, having one-on-one check-ins. That's one of the things, interesting, a little sidebar, that we've heard from kids and from teachers is it's really hard, in an in-person world. Kids would come into a classroom, they'd be able to check in with each other, they might joke around for a minute, they can check in with the teacher in a really much easier fashion than when everybody's on a Zoom. Having that one-to-one conversation gets a little more difficult. So that's come up, and we're going to look at ways to support that. Providing parents progress updates, and how else can we provide extension activities, communication, and one particular one that came up was college interest groups. From our students, we had over 1,000 responses from students in grades 4 through 12. And over on the left, you're going to see the exact same academic supports as what the parents had said. So the kids are asking for the same types of things. And on the right, very similar, again, more opportunities for one-to-one with their teachers. They want to be able to put together some study groups and other ways to ask questions, I'm guessing privately or anonymously, so not in front of the whole class when you're on Zoom. From our families, around wellness, because that was another big section of the learning continuity and attendance plan. On the left side, that again was from a list of ideas that parents could rank. And clubs and spirit days, you'll see this for the students as well, came up as one of the #1 things. They want to still participate, even though it's virtual, in clubs and spirit day activities. Having some lessons, so some class lessons on social emotional learning. And then they were interested in this idea of interest-based classes after school hours, either in the afternoons or evenings that they could participate in for a sense of connection and finding a passion and pursuing that passion as a way to have some sense of well-being. On the right side were other things that we were asked to consider. So is there a way to do peer mentoring or buddy systems, again, with classes? Again, this need for this social hangout opportunity. So how can we carve that into our days? Interest clubs and mindfulness. And then for students, you'll see the same things on the left that we saw from the parents. And then it was really interesting to me to see what came up. We had a list of, I don't know, maybe 25 ideas for interest-based classes. If we could offer them either through paying teachers to provide classes, in the evening time or in the after school time, or reaching out to our community partners. And so those lists there are the ones that by far were the most requested types of classes that people would be interested in. So now so that was the feedback that we received from parents, from parent groups, from the surveys. And now we're going to get into the actual report. And so what I did, because the report that you have is 30 pages long, it's attached to your board packet, and it's written mostly in narrative form. So the next slides really take each section of that and sort of just deconstruct it. So the first section in the LCP is just general information about school. So the whole first part I wrote about our school district, and then just the process that we used as we transitioned from last March until we started school in August. This next section is quite lengthy in the report, and it outlines the stakeholder engagement process. As I said earlier, we had over 34 meetings with our El Capitan union groups and our site and our staff. We have an LCAP parent advisory group that joins the El Capitans, and that's a really rich conversation. We met with our district English language arts committee to get feedback specific to English learners. We had a great meeting with Miss Corona with our special education parents to get specific feedback from them. We met with our African American parent group and with our administrators. And so from all of those groups, it was just a wealth of information and ideas of how can we best support our kids both academically and socially emotionally. And then we also did surveys to all staff, students, and families. The next section in the LCP asks when we can do in-person instructional offerings, what would it look like? And so I've brought this information to you in previous presentations. Right now we're in 100% virtual, and that is because of the governor's executive order. When we can, and it's safe to do so, our next phase might be something like a virtual plus, which would be most kids would stay virtual, but we might be able to bring back small groups of students who need extra support. And likely those would be kids in our special education program, some of our students who are in the unduplicated student groups, which is EL, foster youth, youth who are experiencing homelessness, and our social economically disadvantaged groups. And other kids who are just really, really struggling and this isn't working. After that, we could look at a 50% hybrid where our students in K-8 would come back 50% of the time. And then high school right now with maintaining virtual for all students 2 days a week with their classes, and then options for small groups with all of the teachers 2 days a week. And then we would also continue to offer a virtual learning option for students who can't return to an in-person model. So the next section of this plan is the lengthiest section, and it really talks about virtual learning, and there's several components to this. And so the first part is really around this idea of continuity of instruction, and the as best as possible, having that virtual instruction mirror as closely as possible to in-person instruction. And we know it's never going to be the same. There's a lot of things that we can't do because it's across a two-dimensional screen. But here are the things that we have done to ensure that no matter if we're in person or virtual, that our kids are getting the best instruction that they can, and our staff has what they need to be able to provide that. So over the course of the summer, Ms. Rice met with many, many teachers to talk about what types of support curriculum they would need that would work both in person and across the district. So we still have our core curriculum, but we were able to purchase a variety of support curriculum to support kids' learning, especially in the areas of ELA and math, but not only there, across the district. We also reached out to teachers to ask what other kinds of engagement and presentation tools would be helpful so that it's not only a stand and deliver, but there's other ways to create some interactive instructional opportunities. The other piece that we are working on currently, and it's going to take us a little bit longer because it's very difficult to do in a virtual setting, but to roll out a really robust assessments in ELA and math for all K-12 students so that we can truly know what learning loss may have happened since last spring through now, and then provide very targeted interventions and supports for kids. And then providing those in addition to synchronous learning time. And the other big thing that we did to ensure continuity of instruction was to move to a one-to-one technology for all students. As we know, all of that technology hasn't come in yet. It's on back order. But when it does come in, we will be a one-to-one school district. This just talks a little bit more. Another section is access to device and connectivity. So we are moving to a one-to-one environment. We have checked out our amazing IT team has checked out almost 2,000 devices to students across the district. We have 1,500 more on order, and hopefully they're going to start coming in shortly. We have not had a lot of requests for connectivity. The most that's coming in is that it's not as robust. And as we've dug a little deeper into that, what's happening is everybody in Benicia is on the internet at the same time. And so the ability just for the information to flow back and forth gets stuck. It's like a traffic jam. And so that doesn't really have any, we can't change that aspect, unfortunately. We do have a group of about 300 students that has requested a device that have not received one yet because we're waiting, but they, I believe, when you'll see our attendance numbers, you're going to see that kids are finding ways to attend, even if they have to use a phone or call in, or use an older device until they can get a school issued one. Another piece is talking about pupil participation and progress. And so that is a big part of the LCP, is how do we know what we're doing is working, and how do we monitor progress, and how do we know if kids are showing up. And so I talked a little bit about the assessments that we'll be giving. We'll give them throughout the school year. The other great thing about the NWEA MAP, which is the assessment platform, is once kids take the initial assessment, they will be grouped by level, so that when you get your assessment report as a teacher, you can see these kids got, the highest level, these kids might be in the next level, and in that level, these are the exact skills and strategies that they need to move up. And so teachers know exactly what they can teach to. And then there are also, when we get to this point, smaller progress monitoring short assessments that are very skill specific. So if someone needed some practice in, say, in estimating, if that was the skill, and you said, okay, I'm going to teach, 6 days or 10 days additional instruction on estimating, then I can re-administer an assessment just on that and see if that instruction made a difference for the students, or if I need to go back and do more. Our intervention teachers will use that as they group kids for extra intervention. The other support that we put in place this year is every single school site has a tech mentor. The high school has 2 to support assessments, data analysis, teachers using technology. They will start to run some small PD sessions for teachers who are interested in learning some new tricks and tools. In terms of pupil participation, we have a 3 coded process for how do kids show up. So they either can show up to their synchronous sessions, which we're requiring all kids to do, but if for some reason they can't, they also turn in work. And then the third way that they can participate and have attendance, positive attendance, is through having communication with the teacher. So for instance, the other day, a chunk of Benicia lost power. And so kids couldn't attend perhaps, or even do their work right away. But if they're in that communication with teachers as sort of that third tier, they're still with us. We're counting them still as engaged. And finally, so that's one new thing in terms of attendance that needs to happen. And then another is that teachers will be working on a weekly student engagement record that really talks about what's my agenda look like for the week, a very general description of the activity, and estimated time value. And it's really an accountability for how that we're providing 240 minutes of instruction a day. The next section in the report is on virtual professional development. And I shared this with you at an earlier board meeting. This summer, we worked with our BTA Teachers Union and rolled out professional development earlier than the start of the school year for teachers who were interested, and we were able to partner with some high quality organizations to provide equity training and technology training. Our department has put out lots of documents and tutorials for parents and teachers to refer back to. We've got tech mentors, and then we'll continue to do virtual professional development as we go throughout the year. There's a section in the LCP that asks about how staff roles and responsibilities have changed in virtual learning and in the time of teaching during COVID. And so these are just examples, because I would venture to say that every single aspect of every single person's job has really changed, and people are rising to the occasion. It's not easy, and they're doing some amazing work. And so here are just some of the ways that our staff have stepped up and stepped out to provide robust virtual learning during this time. There is another section in the LCP that is specific about how we support students with unique needs. And so, again, they will have additional support sessions that are in addition to or outside of their synchronous learning, because we always want it to be what they're getting in the classroom plus more. When we can, we would like to start with them for some in-person small group. We provided some additional support curriculum for our special education program so that they have access to all of the general ed curriculum and other specialized academic curriculum to support their students when working in person or virtually. We're working on trying to create consistent schedules, because we know that's really a need for families. The other thing, and this came directly from feedback from our special ed parent group that we met with, is really understanding that some of our kiddos are struggling with manipulating a keyboard and a mouse. And so we have on order, I don't know when they're going to get here yet, but touchscreen devices for students at special education who need that. We're also working on finding ways for collaboration and more communication between the general ed and special education teachers, so that everything is more synchronous, if you will. And they've asked for virtual social groups, and so we're looking at ways to provide that. And then our behaviorist is providing some curriculum, some hands-on materials, and some office hours for parents to get some extra support as well. There's a section on pupil learning strategies, and to help with pupil learning loss. And so again, you're going to hear some of the same things in here, but we will be really looking at the data that comes from our assessments to identify who's got needs in what particular areas, and then offer very targeted support. We also were able to, or we will be, we haven't done it yet, but we have posted 4 reading tutors. We were able to use them last year through the Low Performing Student Block Grant. We will be bringing them back again this year. They will work alongside our intervention teachers, our elementary intervention teachers, that we can service and provide more intervention to more students on an ongoing basis in more areas. And another thing that's listed here is English language arts and math labs at the secondary level, and that came through loud and clear as one of the top strategies requested for by our secondary students in order to support them. And so those would probably be outside of the school day, and likely with hopefully we'd be able to hire some teachers to do that, where kids could just drop in and get extra support in those key areas. We need to identify how we're going to measure the effectiveness of all of this work. And so again, we'll be monitoring the data at the classroom, site, and district level. We'll hold data team meetings. We'll be able to group and regroup students based on that data. We will track attendance. Teachers are in, principals are working with their teachers on all of that as well. So lots of ways to look at our kids' learning and the interventions we're putting in place working for students. Another big section, so that was all the virtual learning section. Another big section in this report has to do with the mental health and social emotional well-being. And so Ms. Corona and Ms. Garcia and Ms. Baker, our student support services team, have worked really hard to put a lot of this work in place. And so we were able to purchase a new social emotional learning curriculum for K-12. And so that will be rolling out as we continue through this school year. We had a grant from a partnership with the County Office of Education to put in wellness centers at all of our school sites, and that happened before COVID hit. And our team has worked really hard to turn those into virtual wellness centers. And I don't have it linked here. I can send you the link. But they're pretty incredible with all different types of activities and videos and things that people can go do to help them recenter themselves. We're offering counseling groups. We have a lot of professional resources out there for trauma-informed practices. We're going to investigate creating this virtual study groups and social events to be responsive to the requests from students. And then one of the other things that we'll be putting together is this idea of interest-based classes after hours. And so you saw the list a few slides back of what kids are interested in, and really working with them to know that connecting with others and finding a passion are two really good strategies to have a healthy social emotional wellness support system for yourself. And so we'll be starting that work shortly. This whole section is on family engagement and outreach, and pupil outreach as well. And so this whole section in the report has to do with when students disengage. And we know that last spring that was tricky. It was tricky for us to keep kids, I would say, kind of on the hook. This year, I'm so happy to report right now our attendance at Mr. Ahill, I think it was 97% and above for kids checking in one of those three ways I talked about. And then we asked principals to let us know how many students that they have not been able to connect with. The middle school and the elementary schools had less than 2 students that they had not been able to connect with in some way, shape, or form. And there were about 10 at the Benicia High School that they have not been able to connect with. And then the other piece of this student engagement is it starts at 3 absences. We kick into a whole process of doing additional outreach, having SST team, student success team meetings, connecting families to services, doing some intake about what is the barrier to get a student here, and doing wellness checks, offering other kinds of supports. And so we're really tracking that, and we're putting together a district-wide plan to track that so that it's not just up to each school site, but that we can look at it as a district as a whole. I will tell you that this slide is not up to date anymore. There's a section in the report about school nutrition, and just, a couple of days ago, I think it was, the food service department was notified that Congress has agreed to continue to do free lunch for all students until December 31st. And so I will update this for when I bring it back in 2 weeks, but we have an amazing food service department that is doing daily meal pickups, early meal pickups for families that need to come at 7 a.m., or multi-day packages if they need to come only a couple of times a week. So there's a lot of different ways that our food service is being responsive to families to come and get food for their students. And now the good news is all students will be able to get free lunch and breakfast. The last section in the LCP is actually the same section that is in the LCAP, which talks about what are we doing, and it's sort of an almost like an addendum, I would say. What are we doing to increase and improve services for our students in the unduplicated student groups? And remember, those are English learners, our foster youth, our youth experiencing homelessness, and our socioeconomically disadvantaged youth. And so we have to identify how we are spending our supplemental funding to increase and improve services for those student groups. Though in the LCP, we don't have to outline the funding source for all of that, but I did list here all of the things that we're using that supplemental fund. So that's, remember, above the base of our LCFF, it's that additional percentage for our unduplicated students. And so this is how we're spending that money. And then in addition to that, this year we we're thrilled to get about $2.3 million in a grant from the government called Learning Loss Mitigation Funds. There are 4 ways we can use that money. So student learning supports. So it's how do we close the gap, identify the gap, and close the gap through intensive instruction. Extending instructional time. And so looking at some of those actions that you heard that were in addition to the school day, providing additional core academic support in the core academics, and then integrated services. And so that is technology needs, mental health services, professional development, and student nutrition. So all of those other services that we know are super important for kids to be able to access their learning, especially in this time of COVID. So this whole plan is based around how are we spending that money? And you heard all of the actions and services. So here are the categories of how that money is being spent. And actually, this is more than just that money. We have some other one-time funds that are also supplementing some of this. We've spent a big chunk in curriculum and instructional materials. Some were up for adoption. Some were additional support materials, and some were things like we had one set of a textbook at the high school. It lived in the classroom for the particular class. We didn't have enough when everybody went virtually, so we had to buy the virtual version of that textbook as well. A major chunk of the money went to technology and connectivity. If you remember, in one of my previous presentations, I talked about we've even, besides student devices, staff devices, we were able to purchase, and I think they just came in. I thought I heard that technology was setting them up. Servers for our CTE programs at the high school that hold all of the high-tech programs that the kids' Chromebooks don't log into, but now they can log into the specialty servers. So we have that. Staffing and personnel costs, so those are our reading tutors and staffing and personnel, reading tutors, some timesheets for extra work. We had an extra teacher at Benicia High School to support the 4x4 schedule, and some stipends. So all of that is in that personnel cost there. Some money in here for additional professional learning time for staff. We know that they're working super hard to redo everything, and we want to be able to provide them some time to do that. The next one is another big chunk of money, and it's for food service, and typically we don't see that in here, but food service is usually a self-contained program. So it funds itself, and it pays for not only all the food purchases and the meals, but all of the staffing costs and supply costs. However, they have had a huge loss because there was no for-pay meals since last March. So that was one big cost. And the other thing that happened was we can't reduce that program because of the executive order that food service personnel are a protected class. And so even though there was less need, we couldn't reduce that program. So we still had all of the staffing costs. And so in order to keep that program from going into the general fund, we're proposing to use some of this money to offset those costs. We have mental wellness supports as well in here. You heard some of those, and those will go to include increasing our special friends groups, those interest-based classes that students were really interested in. We will, so that's what the big finance for that is right there. The assessment materials we talked about, and then the reading tutors and the math labs. So that's where the breakdown of the learning loss mitigation and other additional funding would go to support virtual school and then school once we get to return during the pandemic. And I think that's the end of this presentation. Are there any questions?
I do, Dr. Beatson.
Sure.
My question was that going back to connectivity and the laptops or the Chromebooks, do we have any idea? Because we're 3 weeks in now, and if that many students are missing, and granted, and I understand it's the whole thing is really hard to get because every school and every state is doing the same thing. I understand the reasons behind it, that there's a backlog, but do we have any idea on a date when these students will be able to get that to them?
I don't. I know that Mr. Padawan calls 2 or 3 times a week. He has days when he calls to find out, and he has not gotten a clear answer yet as of this week.
That worries me. It
Yes.
worries me that they don't all have the proper tools to be able to do their online education. And also, you said in one of your slides, it said there's only 2 people that don't have internet. And
Yep.
is that at Robert Semple?
I don't know what, I can find out. I don't know what school site the request came from. Like I said, some of the requests were coming in because so somebody might have Comcast, but it's not a great
It's not a good
service.
connection.
We're experiencing that. I was, at the district office today, and the way it's explained to me is that the pipe is only so big, and it's almost like a traffic jam in there because everybody and their brother's on now trying to use the internet at the same time. So it's not anything that we can do differently. But yeah, we've only had 2 requests for support that we could provide.
So all of our students, other than 2 people, have been able to utilize some sort of internet connection.
That's
not missing.
Not to my understanding. And we have, when we look at the numbers of students that are showing up to their Zoom classes, that's the other, we send out the surveys and we ask, and then I know our principals have called and done follow-up with families, but then we are having kids show up. So that's
Awesome.
our sort of indicator.
Okay. We'll just keep moving forward. Thank you so much. That was a lot of material.
I know.
Thank
I felt
you.
like I talked forever. I apologize.
Okay.
I just have a question for clarity also, Dr. Bateson. And it's along those lines of the students. So I know you mentioned that there were like maybe 10 or so students who hadn't shown up yet. And I know you guys are doing like some follow-up and everything. The site principals are doing follow-up. Do you know if those students who have not shown up are students who do not have the devices as well?
I don't know. And I can ask that question to our high school staff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Dr. Beatson?
Actually, Dr. Moss, I don't think, I will follow up, but our high school's 1-to-1. So I don't think that is an issue, but I will definitely confirm that.
Yeah, I was just curious if there was any kind of any kind of
correlation. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
To give us some context, Dr. Beatson, how many students would we have in SARB in a regular year? Like students that aren't coming to school?
It varies month to month. They've done SARB every month. And sometimes it's, I'd say between 6 and 10 students a month. But we haven't, and Ms. Corona has done an amazing job of putting together a really solid process. And that I think is going to help us move forward. Before, we didn't have every site doing things exactly the same way.
So, but you also said right now we're showing a 97% attendance rate.
I think it's 97. The schools said that they're having, because kids can show up in 3 ways. Mm-hmm. It's really different when you're in person and either the student is in school or not in school, but now they can show up or they can participate by showing up for their Zoom or their synchronous learning, by turning in work, and by communicating. So if, like the example I gave of the power outage, the student couldn't do any of that day. Right. They communicated. So they're sort of on the hook. So it's a little bit different. What we have talked about with our administrators is if the kids are only communicating, then we need to hook in and start an SST process, because we want them attending in their virtual classes and we want them turning in work. And so if they're only after the fact every day saying, oh, I couldn't get on, or, oh.
Right. So I guess so my next question, I think, kind of goes back what Mrs. Zeta was referring to too, is if students are only connecting with their iPhone or whatever other phone device they have, I've been watching some of the work groups that are going on with the kids. How are they getting like the work assignment to do the work? I mean, I get they're on the phone, so they're hearing the lesson and the instruction, but what I'm observing from the kids that I work with is their assignment is also right there. I mean, the teacher loads it up and it's right there and they're working on it. And when they need the textbook, they go to their account and the textbook is there. So how's that working?
Yep. So my understanding is that our principals and teachers will reach out and have been reaching out to students who need that. And if they have to do a packet drop off or a packet pickup so that they supply them with the materials, we've given them that directive, as a matter of fact, to say, we're not going to ask kids to try to figure out how to print all these things or go someplace. We will provide them that material. Okay. So I'm assuming that is happening.
Okay. I mean, that's just my concern, which I think is, it's like, how does that work and what does it look like for the kids? So, okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? This is our time to be discussing this. It's a pretty lengthy plan.
I can say
you guys have done an amazing amount of work. I've sat in on some of your curriculum committees, and wow, you guys work hard.
Well, thank you. I will let you know that the plan that's attached to your board packet, I've updated since there was some typos and things and just some clarification. So I've made that so the next one that gets uploaded in 2 weeks will be a little bit cleaner than some of this. I've tried to work on the formatting a little.
Okay, well, this was also an opportunity at the public hearing, but we did not receive any comments. No, just confirming that. We did not receive any comments from the public at this time. So if we don't have any other comments as a team, I am going to close the public hearing. Is there anybody else that has a comment? Okay. All right,
thank you.
Meeting is closed. You can breathe now. Thank you very much. And I'm going to reopen our board meeting. We will be coming back. The plan will be coming back for an official action on the 17th, which will be our next board meeting. So we'll get to go through, and if we have any more questions, we could save them for then. That'll be another opportunity for us to go through it. At this point, we're up to our adjournment. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, all of our partners that are supporting our students and their educational journey. This is a pretty massive and amazing undertaking, and I am extremely proud of everybody. As I said, I get to see, I'm in 3 of the 6 cores at the middle school in the 6th grade, and there is not one day that goes by that I'm not amazed and impressed. I think it's pretty incredible work, and it's a lot of work. So I know everybody at every level is doing amazing stuff. So with that said, there is nothing left on our agenda. So be safe and stay well, and we'll see y'all soon. Thank you.
Bye.